The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation on how to improve your resume with practical strategies. My name is Petia Abdur Razzaaq, and I will be your Grow with Google trainer this morning. A little bit more about me. In addition to being a part of the Grow with Google speaker team, I also own a boutique digital marketing firm in New York City, and I work primarily with Google partner organizations located in Ohio and New York State. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the program, Grow with Google helps people grow their skills, careers, and businesses by offering free digital skills training and tools. Today, we're going to review some strategies for making your resume more effective and some tips for how you can avoid major pitfalls that you can easily fall into. I will be reviewing lots of examples and also giving you some practice, and we'll also give you some tips for how to use digital tools to make your resume writing much easier. I want this to be as helpful for you as possible, so make sure to post your questions directly in the questions chat box so that I can address them when I do my Q&A sessions. There is also a fun exercise that we will be doing together, so please make sure that you have a piece of paper and pen ready if you wish to participate. Before we get started, I'd like to invite today's co-host organizations to take the floor and welcome you and introduce you to their respective organizations. So, starting with Tasha.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tasha Penwell, and I am the Computer Science Program Manager here at Hawking College. I'm also I have my own firm that I also do some marketing with and help with some resume writing for our local community. And I'm an instructor here at Hawking College, and I also volunteer at a rehabilitation clinic talking about job search techniques. And we use the Grow with Google resources, a lot of the applied digital skills. I'm a fan of them. If you have any questions on how those work, feel free to reach out to me as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. And moving on to Anthony.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Haig. I'm the Director of IT over at a nonprofit in Youngstown, Ohio called Oak Hill Collaborative. And what we're really focused on is bridging the digital divide. And this initiative is called the Digital Advantage. What we're trying to do is we've identified the three, root causes of the digital divide, that being lack of access to tools, lack of access to education, and I feel most importantly, lack of access to connectivity, either due to poor broadband adoption or just not readily available information. Like, people don't know what's out there for them, so they default to just saying, internet's too expensive, I don't need it. Well, we're here to, break that stigma down, show you that there is options, and we're looking forward to a brighter future where everyone's online, connected, and doing what they need online to either live life or succeed, To learn more about our mission, I put the website there up. We have a blog that gets regularly updated with what we're doing. And as for events, other than our Grow with Google Talks, I think all that we have coming up here soon is a little event called Makerspace Night Online. We do have a makerspace here at the Collaborative, but for those who can't make it to the location, we like to go online with a Zoom call and just discuss various subjects. April's discussion is going to be about web development and how creating a portfolio website isn't as scary as you may think. And I'm going to end this note with thank you all for coming, and thank Grow with Google for putting this on.
Thank you, Anthony. And Marjorie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marjorie Hanna, Program Coordinator with Dress for Success New York Programs. Dress for Success is a global organization which focuses on empowering women to achieve economic independence. We provide a network of support, professional attire, and development tools to help women thrive in work and in life. And as part of providing women with professional development tools, we have partnered with Grow with Google. We are aimed at helping Grow with Google serve, I believe we are committed to 20,000 Black women in 2021. So we are very excited about that. And of course, if we're here, we do understand the importance of technology and how Google can really help us streamline utilization of technology through their tools. So I'm super excited to be here, and my email is available for any participants interested in further participation with Dress for Success, and in any way we may help you. So feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie. Okay, a lot of people like to take a snapshot of this slide just in case you have any questions for me after the presentation. So you can feel free to do so. You will be receiving a copy of today's presentation as well as a link to download the recording from your respective host organizations. Please give them at least 24 hours to follow up with you. They do have to wait on me to send them the recording as well as the hard copy of the presentation. If for some reason, however, you do not get any of your follow-up materials within 24 hours, you can feel free to reach out to me. If you are going to reach out to me, just please let me know who your host organization is, or was, I should say, because it'll be in the past, so that I can direct you to the right person so that you can get your follow-up materials. Okay, so let us get started. We are here today to talk about resumes, and the presentation has been broken down into 3 parts. First, we will observe some resumes together so that we can develop a sense of how a hiring manager evaluates resumes that come across his or her desk. Then we will focus on 4 strategies you can use to make your resume better. At the end of the session, you'll have a checklist of resume strategies that you can then apply to make your own resume more attractive to potential hiring managers. Let's take a minute to think about the purpose of a resume. How much time on average do you think a potential employer or hiring manager spends looking at a resume? And I like to have some fun with this. So if you guys can just put your guesses in the questions box, that would be great. Some people will say 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even as much as 30 minutes. The thing is that we often assume that the employer will read our entire resume from top to bottom, but that is rarely the case. All right, so let me take a peek in the questions box to see what you guys guessed in terms of length of time that a hiring manager looks at your resume. So I have everything here ranging from 15 minutes, 2 minutes, 60 seconds, 5 minutes, 15 to 20 seconds, to 1 minute, 3 minutes. You guys are great. I like it when there's interaction going on. Okay, so the answer is that most recruiters and employers only spend about 6 to 10 seconds looking at a resume. A lot of people get nervous when they hear that because literally you only have 10 seconds to make an impression, right? So this is why it becomes extremely important for you to have a resume that will be eye-catching or grab someone's attention within 6 to 10 seconds. Okay, so moving on to our first fun exercise together. It'll be a challenge. Imagine for a moment that you are a hiring manager looking for someone to fill a position. You know what you're looking for, but you're really busy, and there are a million things on your to-do list. So now you have the task of going through the most recent stack of resumes on your desk during your lunch period, which is only 30 minutes. We will complete the activity this way. And the goal of the activity is for you to get a sense for the first impressions that can be made when you submit a resume. This is the activity that you'll need a pen and paper for if you choose to participate in. So I'll give you a couple seconds to grab a pen or paper, or you can just open a digital document like a text document or Word document, which can be easier sometimes. So this is what we're going to do together. First, we look at a sample job description. Then I'm going to show you 6 examples of resumes. I'll give you about 7 to 10 seconds to look at each resume and process it. For each one you see, I need you to write down one word that describes the resume and then decide with a quick yes or no if you'd like to spend more time with it. And so, whether you're going to move it into the review part 2 file. So this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do this 6 times. All right, hopefully you're ready with your pen or paper or your digital note taker. Let's go. Here is the job description along with some of the skills you will be looking for. And if it's helpful, some people like to take a quick snapshot of the slide to remind themselves as we go through the exercise. But first, I'll read the job description for you. So the position is for a sales representative. And this is the description. We seek a high performer to join our sales team. The successful candidate will be a responsible, motivated sales associate with proven experience. This person will manage the entire sales cycle, identifying sales needs, locating and expanding new markets, designing and delivering sales presentations, and presiding over negotiations. You will build and maintain expertise about a range of company products and services. To meet or exceed personal and departmental sales goals, you'll need excellent customer service skills, an entrepreneurial worldview, business acumen, and a professional sales philosophy. So this is the position you're attempting to fill. Remember, when you see the resume, you're going to write down one adjective that best describes the resume, and then a simple yes or no as to whether you're moving it into your second pile to take a closer look later. Okay, ready? Here we go. Resume number 1. Clear headings make it easy for employers to identify the different sections of your resume and narrow in on the important areas for them. It also allows them to skim your resume more quickly. White space and wide margins are important to give the resume reader's eyes a break. Oftentimes, we reduce margin sizes and add more text when we're trying to fit in too much information on one page. This can make it more difficult for the employer to read, which could distract them from the actual content of the resume. This resume has a good amount of white space, which improves its overall readability. Opportunities for improvement. You probably noticed that Asha doesn't have a lot of experience in sales. She created a skills section at the top of the resume, which can be helpful for employers to get a quick overview of her skills. However, most of these skills aren't relevant to the sales representative position that she has applied for. Be sure to build out an overview at the top of your resume that tailors your experience to the position you're seeking. Your experience section should include more details around how you acquired skills in your previous positions, but make sure you highlight the skills that are most relevant to the job that you have applied for. Resume number 2. Sometimes your work experience isn't the only area of your resume where you can showcase the value of your accomplishments. Be creative. Think about things like certifications, awards, volunteer work, part-time jobs, and even continuing ed classes that make you more qualified for the position you're seeking, and be sure to include those on your resume. Opportunities for improvement. You probably noted that Adam's resume doesn't include any details about the responsibilities or accomplishments at his previous jobs. Please don't assume that the employer reading your resume will know exactly what you did at each job just based on the title. You also don't want to miss an opportunity to highlight any successful projects that you may have led or have been a part of. Remember to expand on your responsibilities as well as measurable accomplishments, and we'll hone in on how you can highlight your measurable accomplishments later in the presentation. Resume number 3. There are a few different font types in this resume that we will talk about in a minute. But the headers used for each section are simple, readable language, which is helpful, of course. Remember to always select fonts and colors that are easy to read. You may have found some of the colors in this resume to be distracting. Depending on your industry, it may be acceptable for you to use an accent color. However, too many different colors could be distracting to an employer. Also, some of the font choices in this resume are difficult to read. It is best to stick to one easable, readable font type throughout the resume. Now, depending on your geographic location, a photo included on your resume may or may not be a standard practice. In some parts of South America, Asia, Africa, and Europe, you are required to include a photo on your resume. However, even if Titus was applying to a job in one of those regions, he should have included a picture that is more professional. And here are some tips if you're going to do this. You want to make sure that your face is easily seen, the photo is in color, and you're wearing professional clothing. You may have also found some typos on this resume. Make sure you take the time to review your resume for grammatical errors or typos so that your employer will not assume that you are not detail-oriented. Next resume. Always select a font type that is simple and easy to read. I don't know about you guys, but looking at this resume usually gives me a bit of a cross-eyed situation. While Jason may have selected a legible font, the lack of a white space makes the resume a whole lot difficult to read. So it's also the size of the font, right? There is no break for the eyes of the employer reading it, which can become overwhelming and distracting. You are likely to be multi-talented with different experiences and interests, which is great. But it's important to only include details that are relevant to the position that you're applying for. Oftentimes, it's not necessary to include additional links to social media profiles or websites. And of course, there are always exceptions to all of these rules, right? So an exception may be that if you're applying to a position in social media management and want to showcase your expertise with strong social media following or examples of pages that you have built, then by all means. Also, some designers and artists may have websites showcasing their work. The most noticeable challenge with this resume is how difficult it is to read. Too much information or crowded text can discourage an employer from reading your resume before they even review your experience. Next resume. Leanna's detailed summary at the top of her resume makes it easy to quickly review the most important details of her experience. When you only have 6 to 10 seconds with an employer, a detailed summary can present the best information in the quickest and easiest way possible. You may notice that the details around each of Leanna's positions follow a specific pattern. These bullet points start with a specific action verb and are followed by a measurable detail. We will talk more about measurable details later, but this approach showcases the proof of how you executed on specific skills. I see that someone has raised their hand. If you can just go ahead and ask your question in the questions box, I'm going to take a break shortly and I will answer it for you. Opportunities for improvement. You may have found the most distracting detail of this resume to be the font choice. It is distracting and very difficult to read. Oftentimes, you will hold different positions during your time at one company. So instead of showing these positions as 2 separate jobs, you can combine them into one, which is easier to read and also does a great job of showcasing your promotions or change in responsibilities. Last resume. You saw an example of a photo on a resume a few slides back, but the image lacked professionalism. In this case, Abraham has included a clear photo squared up to the camera with a smile on his face. While it may not be appropriate depending on your industry to include a photo on your resume, this one is an example of a photo that would be more suited for an application in a region where photos on resumes are acceptable. Abraham's resume is slightly more creative in nature, but that makes sense when you take a look at his background as a graphic and web designer. While he might not be a good fit for a sales representative role, his resume has a clean, clear layout and plenty of white space, which makes it easier to read. While Abraham's resume is easy to read, there are some obvious typos and errors that can be distracting. You may have noticed that not all of the filler text was removed in the skills section. So many times resumes are done from templates, which is great because they're formatted nicely, but you have to be careful to remove all of the placeholder text that comes with the template and to customize that text with your own information. And so in this case, Abraham forgot to do that. Okay, So before we move on to do a recap of the mistakes that we saw, let me take a look at the questions box because I think that, okay, so I'm going to discuss measurable details in depth further on in the presentation. So if you can just hang tight, that would be great. I have several examples that demonstrate exactly what that means. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. So we just noticed or made a note, hopefully you guys are taking notes, of several pitfalls that hiring managers often see as they review resumes. Some things that detract from a good resume are, based on what we saw, the resume is too sparse or doesn't have enough information. Or on the other side of things, it is too crowded or hard to understand. Next, we looked at some distracting text and fonts, and then we saw instances where there were multiple errors. This list is an important list for you to keep so that you can make sure that you're not making these mistakes yourself. So that's a starting point. But you may be asking yourself, how do I really build a good resume? How do I make it more likely that my resume will pass that 6 to 10 second look? And how do I showcase my skills and abilities to prove to this employer in just 10 seconds that I may be a great candidate for the job? And so we will go over some strategies on how to do that next. And so this is just a really quick recap of all of the mistakes that we went over or observed together. Okay, here goes. So while there is no one right way to write a resume, there are many different resume styles and formats that might be appropriate for the job you're applying for, right? Today, we will focus on 4 key things you can do to strengthen your resume. And this could be across industries, across, levels of jobs. If you employ these tactics in your resume writing, the chances that you will get that second look will increase. So the first thing you should always do is choose a professional font. Remember to clearly highlight your skills and accomplishments. Use specific examples and measurable details. And finally, to always tailor your resume to fit the specific job description. So if you guys wanted to take a snapshot of this slide, you can go ahead and do so, because these are the strategies that you always need to be employing to be successful in your resume writing. Starting off with choosing a professional format. Depending on the job you're applying for, you may want to create a more traditional resume or a more creative resume for a creative field. And so again, you are the best person, depending on your experience in your industry, to decide what format of resume you need to work on. And if you're not so sure, then asking the advice of a career counselor is usually the best way to go. The main thing to remember is that your resume should be professional, organized, and of course, easy to read. Here are some key attributes to employ when creating your resume. Be sure to include wide margins and lots of white space. White space is a space on the page that isn't filled with any text or graphics. Use simple, readable language, clear headings, and always choose an appropriate font. You may be thinking, but I don't know how to do all that. I don't have any special design skills. Or maybe you just don't feel comfortable formatting a resume from scratch on a computer. The great news is that you don't need to have any design skills to create a professional resume. You can just choose from a variety of pre-built Google resume templates that have already done all that for you. Templates are like a pattern that you use as a guide. They provide some design elements and formatting that you can use as a starting point for your projects. They also help you to keep font sizes and styles consistent throughout your document. Google Docs also offers lots of free professional resume templates to get you started. The layout, fonts, and colors are different for each template, but they all contain the same basic information that you'll need for your resume, such as your contact information, skills, experience, education, as well as a placeholder for any special accomplishments or projects that you may have completed. After you select a template, you can customize the document from there. To access these templates, you will sign into your Google account, click New, select Google Docs, and then select from a template and choose a template that you like. After the workshop, please take a look at these templates and think about which one might work best for you. You will find that some of the templates seem to lend themselves to certain industries. If you're unsure as to what you should choose, please check with a colleague or your career counselor about the standard styles that will be acceptable for your field. We won't go into each template today, but please feel free to explore them on your own as you build your resume, put the strategies you will learn into use. Moving on to highlighting your skills and accomplishments. So we just addressed what style of resume you should choose. Let's talk next about the strategy you can use to make your resume more professional by highlighting your skills and accomplishments. Notice this says highlight, not list, because you don't need to include everything. Your resume is not a comprehensive list of all the jobs you ever had, or even a list of all the things you've been involved in for the last decade. Your goal is to showcase the skills and accomplishments you have and make the employer want to call you for an interview. Now, once you get called in for the interview, that is your opportunity to expand more and give more details and talk about other things. What you're trying to do here is convince them that you are a good fit for the job you're applying for. At this point, they don't need to know absolutely everything that you've ever done. However, hiring managers do want to see what skills and accomplishments are more relevant to the job you're applying for. And they will likely also want to know the most recent work experience that you have. So you should always put the most recent work experience first. Please don't be afraid to eliminate jobs from your resume that are not relevant to the one you're applying for. Your work experience list does not need to be exhaustive. It needs to only highlight the skills and accomplishments that you have for that specific job. On the other hand, if you've done other activities like part-time jobs or volunteer work that are closely related to the job you're applying for, and you've used or developed skills that would also help in that job, of course you should include them. If you need to account for a gap in your work history, volunteer work can also be good to showcase that you were still utilizing and developing your skills, even if you weren't getting paid. If you're starting a new career and haven't worked in the field before, examine all the job experience or life experience that you have and try to make connections wherever you can. Okay, second challenge. Let's practice deciding which opportunities you might include on your resume and which you should eliminate. Imagine you're applying for the sales representative position you saw earlier, and you had worked these jobs in the past. So on the left is your experience, on the right is the sales position job that we saw earlier. Take 2 minutes to review each of these positions and write down which jobs you would include in your resume, which you would not, and maybe a quick note as to why. Also, consider what specific projects or measurable details you might include to show that the past experience is relevant to the job that you're applying for. Now, what you should or shouldn't include in your resume is entirely subjective. Some people may have chosen to include babysitting, while others may think it doesn't apply. It all depends on the skills that you used when you were doing that job. Okay, so I'll give you guys a minute or so, or maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds to make a note of which jobs you would include on your resume for this sales representative position and which ones you would not. And then I would like if you can share that with me in the questions box. Okay, is anybody willing to share which of these jobs they're going to include on their resume for this job description? Or are you guys going to be shy? You haven't been shy so far, so let me see. Somebody did respond. So Mimi is saying volunteer work. Julianne said I would share wait staff, cashier, and bank teller. I would not share babysitting, freelance blogging. Okay, all right, you guys, thank you for participating. And Jacinta said she would include the bank, the cashier, the volunteer work, and the blogging. All right, great. So let's move on and see how we can actually craft this response. Let's talk about some of the skills that we can pull from each of these positions. Because honestly, you guys, it is not uncommon for someone to actually be qualified for a job based on their skill set, even though the title of their previous jobs may not indicate that it's obvious. So let's go through this. For a wait staff position, you may have been tasked with upselling customers you were waiting on. Anything from telling them about the desserts to suggesting a specific accompaniment to their meal could be viewed as an upsell activity. As a cashier, you likely engaged with customers for the majority of your workday, and this skill is important for a sales representative. Let's say you raised funds as part of your volunteer work. This experience could be viewed as being very similar to that of a sales representative. And as a bank teller, you likely had to learn the details of every product or service that the bank offered. This was a skill specifically included in the sales representative job description. Freelance blogging work could also be relevant if you were required to negotiate rates for your job with publications or clients. As we all know, negotiation skills are important to any sales position. So the lesson here is that it's all about pulling out the skills that you used in your prior jobs to then showcase how those skills can help you to perform the job that you're applying for. Here's another way to use digital tools to help you organize information for your resume. You can use digital documents to keep a running list of all of the things you might consider under experience. Those things may include part-time and full-time jobs, side work you do around the neighborhood, as part of your involvement in clubs or organizations, and of course, your volunteer work. The advantage of using a digital document is that you can update it at any time from any device that is connected to the internet. This way, when it's time for you to sit down and update your resume, you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking of what you did in the past. You already have a complete list that you can just copy and paste from. Moving on. I know you guys are anxious. I've seen in the questions box, people are like, what are measurable details? How do I showcase my measurable details? So moving on to our third strategy. Maybe you have many things to include in your resume, but don't know which ones to emphasize. The question you may be asking yourself is, how do you make those connections and show the employer that you're right for the job? And the way to do this is by using specific examples and measurable details in the descriptions of your work experience to showcase what you achieved or accomplished. This is also called showing impact. And the goal here is to articulate specifically what you have done and how it has impacted your coworkers, your team, or the company that you worked for. Lots of people will have words like innovative, organized, efficient, leader, and effective communicator on their resume. But what does that actually mean? One way to elaborate further is to use specific examples from your previous experience. Describe specific projects you worked on, improvements you made, processes you developed, or goals that you attained or went above. Describe the quality of the work you've done in the past and show how it relates to what you can do for your potential employer. The second way is to use measurable details whenever possible. And this speaks to quantifying the work that you did. For example, you might say that you increased sales at your current job, but what does that really mean? Did you increase sales from 1 widget to 2 widgets per month? Hopefully that's not the case. Or did you increase sales from 1 widget to 1 million widgets over a 6-month or 12-month period? Show your impact in numbers whenever possible. This is also a great place to add any awards or recognition that you may have received. These show how other people have viewed your accomplishments. Let's put this into practice. I'm going to show you some examples of work experience, and for each example, on your paper, your digital document, based on what I just told you, try to list the kinds of measurable details and specific examples that you may use to expand on these basic job descriptions. Okay, so starting with the first one. Think about how you could make these skills descriptions more specific by adding measurable details. So right now it just says managed team, trained new employees, ran meetings effectively, sold more than sales target. I'll just give you a second to jot this down in your notes and then we'll move on. Okay. So here is an example of how this should really be presented. Instead of just saying managed a team, you would want to say managed a team of 8 employees from new hires to 15-year company members. Trained 15 new employees in 2 years, developed an onboarding program, and documented procedures for all employees to follow. Instead of just saying ran meetings effectively, you can say ran weekly team meetings with 20 attendees, relayed sales targets from directors, and assigned tasks to team members. Instead of just saying that you sold more sales than the target, you could say exceeded individual sales target by 20% and then quantify that. And you did this by selling 20 widgets over the company set goal of 100. Let's move on to the next example. This is a volunteer experience. based on the example we just saw together, try to expand on these 2 bullet points. And if anyone is brave enough, I'd like to see, since it's just 2 bullet points, how you would have expanded this yourself. Anyone? You can just do 1 bullet point. So somebody do the served meals to shelter residents and put the answer in the question box. Or you can do the organized holiday events, whichever one is easier. Nobody? Okay, somebody just did it. Very good. Okay, served daily meals to 50 residents. You got it. All right, that's great. Assisted in agency public service, organized 1 holiday event each month over the span of a year. That's right. You guys are definitely getting the point of this. I like that. Okay. So everybody that answered, you're definitely on the right track. And so here are some ideas for how we could expand these bullet points. So instead of just saying served meals to shelter residents, you would say served meals to over 200 shelter residents every other week for 6 months. Instead of just saying organized holiday events, you would say worked with Cove Director Janice Murray to coordinate the shelter holiday party. Obtained $2,000 from local businesses to fund the party. Prepared over 200 pounds of fresh food donations and decorated the community center for the event. All right. So it's all about expanding with specific examples and measurable details. And how you know you have a measurable details? There's usually numbers involved. All right. So moving on to our last strategy to tailor your resume for each specific job that you're applying for. Now, a lot of people ask me this question because they've heard this, and it's absolutely true. Many businesses use screening software to narrow the pile of possible candidates before a hiring manager even looks at the resume. These programs scan the resume for keywords that are in the job description. If those words do not appear enough in the resume, the program then determines that the person is not a good candidate for the position. So what you need to do in order to get past both human and computer screeners is to make sure that the language in your resume matches the language of the specific job description. Here's a tip. When you create a resume for a particular job, you should incorporate as many of the keywords used in the job description into your past experience and your work history as possible. When you do so, you not only get past the screening software or the person, but it shows that you paid close attention to the qualities that they want in a candidate. Okay. So let's take another couple seconds to reread the job description that we used earlier. Jot down a few words from the job description that you would incorporate into your resume if you were applying for this position. Here are some questions to ask yourself. What are some of the words you would incorporate into your resume based on the language used in the description? You should pay attention to the action verbs that are included in the job description. That's a key right there. Right? So hopefully you had some time to jot down some of the words. So you might want to include words like responsible, motivated, managed sales cycle, identified sales needs, located new markets, design and delivered sales presentations, presided over negotiations, building expertise, customer service goals. This is just from scanning the description. Like I said, pay attention to the action verbs that are included in the job description. Okay? The action words that are in the job description can help you shape the skills for each job and also help you to include measurable details from your past work experience. They also help your resume to sound professional without sounding forced. So here we have identified some of the action verbs from the job description that you may want to incorporate into your own resume if you were applying for this position. And if you guys want to take a quick snapshot of this slide, you can do so, because I think it will help you going forward to scan jobs that you may actively be looking for. All right. Let's review our 4 strategies. We're almost at the end of our time today. In the workshop, we began by looking at sample resumes to see what hiring managers look for. Then we examined 4 strategies for improving your own resume. Remember, choose a professional format. Try to achieve balance so your resume doesn't look too crowded, too busy, or too empty. Use a template to help with formatting. Starting with a resume template gets you 50% of the way. Remember to highlight your skills and experience, and always include your most relevant and recent experiences. Include specific examples and measurable details using the guidelines that I shared. Show your achievements and skills rather than just mentioning them. Finally, always tailor your resume to the job you want. The tip here was to use words from the job description to impress or get past resume screening programs as well as hiring managers. You can use this as a checklist as you develop or revise your own resume. There are many other digital tools that can help you with the job application process as well. We've already mentioned resume templates, but you could also use docs to keep records of past experience and measurable details. Use Google Sheets to track every step of your application process, or create a digital portfolio using Google Slides. Each of these projects can be accessed anywhere from Google Drive as long as you have access to the internet, and they save automatically so you don't have to worry about losing your work even if your computer crashes. At this point, we've given you several strategies and digital tips. So before we go, let's talk about next steps. I want you to leave this workshop with a clear sense of what you should do next. So here are a few recommended ways for moving forward. Review possible resume templates and choose one that suits your industry, experience, and style. Examine your current resume and find places to include specific examples and measurable details. Create a running list of experiences that you can use to tailor your resume. And lastly, consider taking more workshops by visiting g.co/growonair. That brings us to the official end of today's presentation. But before I let you go, I'm going to take another look at the questions box to see if anyone had any questions, any more questions. Okay, so wonderful. Identifying sales. Ronaldo was actually pointing out the words that he would use. Very good. Identifying sales, customer service. Great job. Great job. You guys were amazing, and hopefully this will be very helpful to you. If you guys can do me a favor, because Google is constantly looking for feedback so that they can improve these presentations and make sure that they're useful. If there's anything that you learned in this presentation that you didn't know before, if you can just make a quick note for me in the questions box so that I can give them feedback, that would be amazing, because they're constantly working to add things that are of value. And so the only way that we know, since everything is virtual, if these workshops are hitting the nail on the head is if you guys let us know. So if you can just, let me know, was there anything you didn't know or anything that you needed clarifying that I covered today that was extremely helpful? You can put that in the Q&A box. I also do a follow-up email right after thanking you for attending. And so if anything occurs to you, then you can also just reply to that email and let me know as well. Because the whole point of this program, as you can imagine, is to make sure that people are equipped with the digital skills that they will need to succeed. Okay, so while you guys are doing that in the Q&A, I'd like to bring my co-hosts back to the stage to make any closing remarks, and then I will have you guys return to the rest of your day. So Tasha, Marjorie, Anthony, do you guys have anything in closing that you'd like to say?
Hi, it was a great presentation. A lot of the advice that you give, I think, is really spot on. I give it to my students as well. The only thing that I can think of is, especially when I'm instructing students who are in the rehabilitation, like they're in the drug and alcohol rehabilitation, I go over things like hard skills and soft skills. And I also touch base on imposter syndrome, because sometimes I think we're kind of concerned, well, we don't know or don't feel like we know enough. It's not relevant to put on a resume. And I just, introduce those concepts, and I have them keep everything in the spreadsheet. Kind of like what you said in the document, just keep track of your experiences and just build up on.
Right, perfect, absolutely, because you don't have to think every time, right? You can just refer and go back and forth. Yes, it's very helpful, saves a lot of time.
Yes.
Great. Marjorie and Anthony, do you guys want to say anything else before we close?
Just echo.
Go ahead. My bad.
No, this was wonderful, and there's nothing I can really think of that wasn't touched upon. I definitely endorse just sort of creating automated systems and storing information to your point, Petia, of not having to redo things, almost keeping content as boilerplates so that you're ready at all times.
Absolutely.
So no, this was fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Anthony?
All right. Just wanted to say that this has been a fantastic session. I've already been to one of the resume workshop talks already, and I don't think it was touched upon here, but I always want to imbue that advice of when you're writing a resume, you may be, tailoring it to the position, but don't forget to be genuine, because you want them to get to know you as a professional. So think less about how they're going to perceive you. Think more about how you want them to perceive you. And I would imagine that we want them to think of us as who we really are, not who they're looking for, if that makes sense. But I'm finished rambling. Thank you, Grow with Google, and thank you, Petia.
Absolutely. No, that is great advice as well. I mean, and I think the point you're trying to make is that you definitely want to tell the truth and be authentic, right? Because God forbid you get hired for a job based on what you said in your resume or what you said in an interview, and then you can't perform. So I think that's a great point to be made, Anthony. Thank you so much for adding that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our session today. You guys were a great audience. Thank you so much for attending. Hopefully you continue to attend to these sessions, and look out in 24 hours for your follow-up materials, and continue to stay safe and be well. Have a good rest of your day.